Hot air balloons. You probably think of them and feel all warm and cozy, romantically overlooking the sunrise. Well, little Johnny, have I got news for you. Simply attach a warship to the bottom and strap various cannons and explosives to it, and voila! You have now got yourself the modern day equivalent of an AC-130, and the only thing more terrifying than a death blimp is 20 death blimps, all controlled by a 4'5" cracked out dwarf laughing in a Scottish accent. Now before you say it, I know, this all sounds incredibly balanced. We can all thank the deranged devs who brought us the new Warhammer 3 DLC, Thrones of Decay. Without them, we wouldn't get to admire our sociopathic propensity for blood-induced war crimes from a dizzying height. As always, the goal for this video is to achieve a short victory before we get engulfed by enemies on all sides. Can we create a world where being short is cool, or will we be forced to crouch in the corner and cry as all of the cool kids point and laugh at us? But before we get into the video, I need to talk to you about a piece of information that just came across my desk. You see, I was happily sitting here playing Warhammer until I heard a buzz from my phone. Naturally, I picked it up to check what it was, and like the golden rays of heaven itself, there it was. The thing that had been missing in my life for so long. What was it? Raid Shadow Legends. That's right, they're back, and they are sponsoring today's video. Raid Shadow Legends is a mobile RPG developed by Plarium Games. It has over 4 million users and a wide variety of different champions, factions, and bosses. Personally, I like to play Raid while I'm on the move. It turns out that clobbering demon spawn with a meat cleaver is a good way to pass the time. To celebrate the arrival of Spring in Teleria, Raid is hosting a special Spring Hunt minigame event starting from April 15th to May 30th. Players will need to find hidden items around the Mistwood. Simply download Raid using the link in my description or scan the QR code in the top left corner. Then head to springhunt.plarium.com, enter your Raid ID and start searching for missing items. Once completed, you could win real-life prizes like a gaming console or Amazon gift cards with a total value of $10,000. There's also in-game loot like legendary champions or skill tomes. Click the link in my description or scan the QR code in the top left corner to download the game, and you'll get a huge starter pack with an epic champion Tyrell from the High Elves faction, and you'll get another starter pack after reaching level 25 that includes an epic Rectodrath. After downloading, use this code for even more cool stuff. All of these champions are only available after downloading via my link or QR code. If you download Raid straight off the App Store, then you won't get these awesome add-ons that the Raid team has given me. So download through my link and come and join my clan, the Warband. Thanks to Raid for sponsoring. Now back to the video. We start our campaign in the snowy regions of Giant Home Mountains, and immediately we are hit in the face by the repugnant smell of our new college roommate. We're already pretty crowded here, with a triple bunk bed of Malachi, Gotrek, and Felix, so we decided to evict that one guy who showers every 4 days. Now let me introduce to you our not-so-secret super weapon, the Spirit of Grangnai. In fact, calling it the elephant in the room would be an understatement, because it's a giant floating death balloon that violently ejects our enemies' body parts from their torsos. Not only did we decide to evict our smelly roommate out of our house, but we evicted him out of his own. Now, for the first time in a long time, we get to use all of the units on our roster. This is because we're playing a brand new DLC, and I want to try them out. I promise you, I will definitely not just recruit one type of unit in the attempt to break the game. Malachi's starting location happens to put us in a bit of a precarious situation. We have enemies on all sides. Chaos Dwarves, Trolls, hell, even the Vikings hate us. I think this is sufficient foreshadowing for future events that literally made me rip out my eyeballs. Now, Malachi himself functions like a horde faction. This means he can essentially become his own little settlement in his airship. Initially, our goal will be to upgrade our airship, because the faster we can get to rank 5, the faster we can blow up literally anyone one we choose. Another thing to note for this campaign is the Great Book of Grudges. It's like our own personal edition of the Death Note, only instead of people dying after being written in it, it's the opposite, kind of like our own trophy room for the amount of death and carnage we cause along the way. With basically every action you take, you earn settled grudges. You can accumulate these points to gain grudge units, and you can also confederate with other dwarven lords. To go along with this, we also have Malachi's Adventures, a group of thematic lore-based quests that offer some pretty big rewards and buffs once completed. Now, this is important because in order to actually achieve the short victory we need, we have to complete 4 legendary battles in Malachi's Adventures. We moved on to set up trade with some Eskimos and some bear lovers who are clinging on to what's left of their hairline. Next on the agenda, war against the obese trolls in the west. We quickly went on to take 2 settlements from them with ease. The Wintertooth faction are led by Throg, the almighty leader of all Reddit moderators. Now, although he looks big and scary, you'll find that he's actually just a big pookie wookie bear. Oh, and he's also pretty dumb. He marched his 20-stack army of Reddit mods out to meet our stumpy little dwarf legs on solid ground. Our response to that was to send Apache helicopters and an AC-130 to literally mow them down. These gyrocopter units proved to be an excellent stand-in for thunder barge units before we're able to recruit them. They also essentially function as our cavalry, since dwarves can't ride horses for some reason. Personally, I thought you would have been able to fit 2, maybe even 3 dwarves on the one horse, making it a mobile 1.5 men killing machine. But I digress. After dispatching Throg, his remaining forces virtually keeled over and died. I think this was due to the sudden onset of shock that hit their system when they heard that their Reddit mod king lost to a guy who barely made it up to his kneecap. After taking their last settlement, we upgraded our airship to tier 3, which gave us the ability to recruit giant slayers, and more importantly, doom seekers, which are dwarves dual-wielding double-sided axes on chains. Some things just explain themselves. Somehow, this news of Throg's destruction pissed off the My Chemical Romance enthusiasts over the coast, so they attempted to extort us to fund their Hot Topic purchases. We declined, and we were at war once again. In the midst of all this, Rasputin offered his services of trade to us, which we definitely weren't about to miss the chance of squeezing the man with the biggest out of everything we could get. Wait, I'm sure there was a better way to word that. Oh, and we also recruited a Gimli into our ranks, because what's a dwarven army without a Gimli?
What are we waiting for?
We were fresh off the press from winning our previous war, so we thought, fuck it, let's declare war on the guy with the cauldron on his head. That style hasn't been in fashion since there were dragons flying around in 2011. Now, I'm not one to bash on the disabled people, but I am one to pillage, plunder, and conquer them, and that's exactly what we did. Clearly, they weren't exactly thrilled at the prospect of total annihilation, so they attempted to persuade me for peace. Let's just say it didn't go too well for them. Although we had just cut through our 2 last opponents like a hot knife through butter, things were about to get a whole lot harder for us. First, Archaon declared war on me and brought their vassal, Kull, along with them. Then, the Emo Kids launched a full-scale invasion on our mainland with 2 full armies. Now, I was going to attribute these unfortunate events to pure heightism. However, the Chaos Dwarves declared war on me as well. It was shaping up to be a full-scale demonic pile-on with Malachi front and center. Our first order of business was dealing with the Goth Kids. Now, honestly, this was a pretty close battle, and the fact that the spirit of Grungnai disappears after 2 minutes doesn't help either. Once we get the ability to keep it on the battlefield indefinitely, I'll feel a whole lot more confident hurling abuse at our enemies from a safe distance. Nevertheless, we defeated Malice and sent the Dark Elves packing. Our Death Blimps shattered their reality to such an extent that they actually needed counseling for months. They were advised to do their best at avoiding all contact with them. So, just a couple turns after attempting to extort me and declaring war on us, we had flipped the script and now forced them to pay us every penny they had just so they could go home and rock themselves to sleep at night. 1 war down, 3 to go. And Malachi's location wasn't exactly helping us out, as he was on the other side of the map. The Chaos Dwarves wasted no time and attacked us straight away, killing Gimli in the process. They would not get away with this, for Gimli's sake. They didn't know it yet, but Gimli wasn't actually a dwarf. No, he was actually a hydra, and for every head you chopped off, 2 more would grow back in its place. So, there he stood, like the second coming of Christ, only 4 foot tall and slightly chubby. We upgraded our airship to tier 4. Now, we were only a shit ton of gold away from our psychotic wet dreams. The Chaos Dwarves continued their assault on us. This lame-ass army couldn't even beat our garrison in one fight, so we abused the heroic order result and wiped one of our many ugly cousins' armies off the map. All the while, we were marching Malachi's ass halfway across the world as fast as we could. To make matters worse, 2 more 20-stack armies belonging to Archaon and his little submissive plaything rocked up on the shores of my capital. Archaon marched down to attack my already weakened settlement from the Chaos Dwarves. We fought this and actually didn't do too bad a job. We managed to whittle down some of his forces, focusing mainly on his high-tier units. And, well, fuck. They besieged my capital. Well, we were fucked, but I can still try and take out some of their stronger units. I can't do this unless my men believe, however. So, I looked them dead in the eye, and I told them we were going to win. I knew for sure that they'd never see their tiny little children again, but they didn't know that. So I sentenced 1,000 of my men to die, and for the most part they did pretty well. We took out a lot of Archaon's stronger tier units. Now don't let my sugarcoating distract you from the fact that we literally just lost our capital city. It doesn't get much worse than that. We were officially up shit's creek. During this time of internal hemorrhaging, we decided that the only way we could come out on top was through the power of friendship. After all, it's not about the destination, but the friends you make along the way. I'm not sure if I actually thought this was going to work, or if I just needed someone to give me a hug, stroke my hair, and tell me that it was all going to be okay. Well, regardless, it was not going to be okay, because the apocalypse was at my doorstep. After we shook off our inner bitch, we got straight back to work. It's times like these that I often think to myself, what would Tony Soprano do? So, I put out a hit on Archaon, mob style. And soon, our right-hand man, Gimli II, found the little rat. It was with this battle that I realized that Archaon really doesn't have the best missile support. So once you take out those units, you can literally just bully him into submission from above, while he hopelessly looks up at the flying death above him. With Archaon defeated, the world was all sunshine and rainbows again. Just kidding. Astrogoth Ironhand had sent his army down and was now directly on our borders. Christmas did come early, however, because we delayed the Age of Reckoning to keep all of these massive buffs. And to top it all off, we spawned an entire army from the nether regions of our arse. Oh, and Archaon tried to enter a peace treaty with us, but every tiny, thick bone in my dwarf body wanted nothing more than to get payback for their invasion. That, and we also needed to take out their faction to achieve the short victory. So we declined. We marched on Astrogoth with our new grudge army. This battle went surprisingly well. We sat up on a hill and blasted away their stronger units with our cannons. Once they came into contact with our front line, we held them into combat in an uphill battle. We then took our Slayer units around to hit their sides, all the while peppering them with missiles. All in all, I think this went pretty well, considering we just took out Astrogoth's army with one that didn't even exist one turn ago. We sent our boy Malachi in to attack from the sea, taking our first piece of land from the Chaos Dwarves. Oh, and we also took out Archaon's little bitch boys. These guys are the biggest joke of a faction I've ever witnessed in my life. They're more like an annoying mosquito to us, rather than posing any actual imperial threat. Things were actually starting to look up for us dwarves. We also made another defensive alliance with the Eskimos to help solidify our southern borders. We had a string of epic victories, and our gyrocopter units were serving us extremely well. I can only imagine what our battles would be like if we had thunder barges instead. We were also upgrading Malachi's horde buildings along the way, picking ourselves up negative 15% upkeep cost for our armies and the ability for the spirit of Grungnai not to disappear. We charged some Easterners exorbitant amounts for trade and we called it a day. When we woke up in the morning, we realized Archaon was back and he had another army, a theme that would become far too consistent in this campaign. Lucky for us, the flames coming out of his eyes are just for show, and we managed to auto-resolve him whilst only losing some tier 1 units. This entire time, we were buffing the shit out of our flying units, giving them more ammunition and range. The war with the Chaos Dwarves was becoming as one-sided as a fat guy on a seesaw. We took province after province from them, and soon they were left with a measly 3 settlements. It seemed like our diplomatic policies were, if you had horns and or fangs, we kill you. If you don't, we force you to pay us money. Good business if you ask me. And finally, Ostrogoth had come out of his little hidey hole to face us. Now, our strategy for this battle was simple. Abuse our US military level aerial superiority. We flew around, taking out the majority of their missile units with our gyrocopters. Once we had softened them up enough, we summoned the spirit of Grungnai, which could now stay indefinitely. As for the other units, their main role was to stand their ground and hold the enemy infantry off. We set up on a hill to have the advantage of fighting on higher ground, but also to utilize our Thunderer units, so they had a clear line of sight on our enemies. The good thing about shooting over dwarves is that they're really fucking short. This isn't that much of an advantage though when you're fighting other dwarves. This was a pretty good battle. Everyone was getting in on the action. Gotrek and Felix were having a hell of a time. For the most part, the spirit of Grungnai did its thing, dropping bombs on people's heads and mowing down a ridiculous amount of enemies. It got over 350 kills, and it was only in about half of the battle. It also lost like virtually none of its health and had basically all of its ammo left. That's when you know a unit needs rebalancing. So once again, we took out Ostrogoth plus another Chaos Dwarf army reinforcing him. This left their capital completely undefended, which we took full advantage of. However, for every enemy we defeat, it felt like there were 2 more to take their place. A Norska faction from the far west of my empire declared war on me, and so did the Greenskins. No big deal. They were only the strongest faction in the world. We were now at war on 5 different fronts, and I was starting to feel the effects of getting repeatedly stabbed in the stomach hundreds of times. The thought of our future domination was the only thing getting me through. I even got the heavy armor plating perk, which made our flying units have an extra 15 armor and 10% more missile resistance. It was turn 58, and I only just realized that we hadn't even started a single Malachai's adventure yet, which was one of the biggest features added to this campaign. So we went ahead and started the Dreadquake Destruction adventure, which offers various insanely strong buffs for our Dwarf Black Hawk units. Now, the way that Malachai's adventures work is that there's a whole bunch of quests that you need to complete, which you're also rewarded for. Once you complete these quests, you can then partake in the Legendary Battle, which puts you in a unique battle situation. After this, we swept up the last remaining settlements from the Chaos Dwarves, resulting in their total annihilation. We had now cut out a pretty sizable portion of the map for ourselves, only we were stretched pretty thin, and we were along a coastline of people that wanted nothing more than to rip us open and eat our guts. This was now going to cause us a lot more problems, because yet another troglodyte with horns declared war on me. That Norse faction was proving to be more than just a slight nuisance to me now also. We took part in a couple of missions for Malachai's adventures. Now, Black Dragons and Kedai Destroyers are pretty scary, but do you know what's scarier? A floating balloon and a bunch of self-propelled short men. Now, before we continue this video, I'd like to take a moment to talk to you about our Lord and Savior, Archaon the Everchosen. That's right, this satanic missionary was back, and he just would not give up. We tried to press them back by taking out their collared dogs, and to prove to you just how utterly disgusting our tactics had become, you need only to look at our battle stats. We lost about 100 men, mainly tier 1 units. How many did we kill? 2,335. I mean, just look at the kills from our ranged units. But we had so many strong enemies that our forces were stretched too thin, and we simply could not defend all of our land. It honestly felt like the CPU was enjoying itself, laughing at my misery. Still, we did the best we could, driving Archaon back to the cursed lands from which he came. Our western borders were bombarded with constant attacks. If our eastern borders were the equivalent of a poorly CGI Hulk killing mutated dogs, our western ones were that of a small helpless child. And all of our actual forces were locked down where they were fighting other invading armies. Maybe my diplomacy wasn't so good after all. The brother of the Chaos Dwarves we destroyed came down to attack me also. He must not have heard of what happened last time. Or maybe he did, because for the very first time in this campaign, the spirit of Grungnai routed. That meant that we actually had to use our brains and battle prowess for a change. A harrowing thought. Then I remembered that we got to slaughter some Chaos Dwarves, and it really picked my spirits back up. So, with a plethora of enemies overrunning my borders, I thought it was a good time to dip out and fight our very first legendary battle for Malachi's adventures. Luckily for us, their tier 5 mortars were all out of ammo, so we had free reign to completely obliterate them from the skies. Their answer to this was to summon Thomas the Tank Engine to battle. Our response? So, we got ourselves a heroic victory, gaining the buffs for our flying units in the process. We also picked up the Dowie Firepower perk, which increased our missile resistance by an additional 15% on top of other effects. With our first adventure done, we quickly moved on to the next one. And the money we made from completing that adventure was enough for us to upgrade our airship to tier 5. We were in the endgame now, boys. Luckily, we had victory in our sights. We only needed to complete one more legendary battle, destroy Archaon, and capture another 6 settlements. And we only needed to save up 12k to get the ability to recruit Thunderbarges. To get this money, we decided we were going to roll the dice and put it all on black. So we charged into the capital of some more Chaos Dwarves and trusted our ability to bomb them to smithereens above all else. This was made a lot easier by having some gyro bomber units, which meant instead of having 2 bombs per copter, we had 11. As you can imagine, I don't think the Chaos Dwarves liked this very much, and even though they almost killed Malachi, we were able to come to a consensual understanding through a spicy political debate. With the second faction of Chaos Dwarves out of the way, we were finally able to recruit our death balloons, and holy fuck were these guys expensive. They were so worth it though. And we wasted no time starting our production line of future grave makers. This couldn't have come at a better time though, because we were collecting wars like fucking Pokemon cards as the dwarf pylon continued. After the emo kids came back for seconds, we literally couldn't fit the number of wars we had on one line anymore. At least we had Rasputin though. We can always count on Rasputin. With our borders completely overrun, we gave up the western part of our empire and turned our focus to getting Thunderbarges and steamrolling Archaon to achieve the short victory. This was easier said than done though, because we had a new rat army popping up and attacking one of my settlements every turn. We did manage to get 5 new units of Thunderbarges in our army however. So, of course we had to take these new puppies out for a spin. We set up all of our forces on a hill and sent out giant-sized Christmas presents, barreling over. Now, 1 Thunderbarge was overpowered, but 5... Now that was just outright unfair. Not to mention we also had the spirit of Grungnai as well, although our enemy wasn't doing too bad at getting obliterated. Again and again. And not only are these units ridiculously strong, but they're also fast. No, they can literally cover half of the battlefield in like a matter of seconds. Add on to that the ability to deploy them in the vanguard, and you can straight up jump your enemy before they have a chance to react. So I think it's safe to say that our death blimps passed the test, and you might even say, with flying colors.
This feels a lot like hell.
Unfortunately for us, our men left some meat out in our camp, and we got ourselves an infestation of genetically mutated maggots. Only these maggots have the intention of establishing or maintaining hegemony over foreign empires. Yes, that means us short kings. Our enemies were closing in, and it felt like no matter how many battles I won, there were just too many of them. And let's just say, peace wasn't exactly an option. We needed some sort of boost, and that's when I remembered that we could confederate with other dwarven lords and liberate the dwarves for good. So, we got Thoric Ironbrow into our clan. He was going to help defend some of our borders, whilst we tried to move on Archaon. To help alleviate some of the molestation that was occurring to our kingdom, we employed some of our allies to actually get up off their ass and do something. Hopefully, they could at least take one of these armies out of the equation for us. Now, honestly, I'm not going to lie. We were hanging on by the skin of our teeth. The more wars we were in led to the more armies we needed to raise, which led to more money being spent, and then it all came full circle when the enemies took our land, and in turn we made less money. If you are going to attempt a Malachi campaign, then heed my words carefully. If you wish to avoid a painstaking 30 hours of gameplay, try to eliminate some of the big threats early, and don't stretch your lands too thin, thus making it near impossible to defend yourself. Also, complete Malachi's adventures and focus way more on abusing the Age of Reckoning than I did. Anyway, back to the video. We had now captured all 30 settlements that we needed to. All that was left for us to do was to complete our final Malachi adventure and take out that pesky bastard, Archaon. Our new plan was one of self-preservation. Hold the enemies off at a choke point province, get more Thunderbarge units, and complete the final tasks, all while trying our best not to go fucking bankrupt, which wasn't going too well. Our new Dwarven additions were serving us well. This guy even came with a really advanced motorized Walmart cart. So we added our last Dwarven Lord to our ranks, because there was no way I was getting another 39,000 settled grudges before finishing this campaign. We also played around with the Forge, getting some items to help buff our other lords. So after leaving Malachi out and recruiting for a while, we managed to get ourselves up to 7 Thunderbarges. Now, although we need to destroy Archaon, we also can't be going bankrupt. And the only real quick way of making money was by destroying a ridiculous amount of enemies. So we decided to really test out these units, taking on 2 armies of fully grown maggots. Now, I wasn't sure how this was going to go, so I set up all my ground units in a little corner against a cliff. That didn't matter at all, because after the battle started, it became extremely clear that they weren't going to be running after my men. They were going to be running for their lives. They also came into this battle with very little ranged units, which meant death from above and not much in return. The Thunderbarge units also have this really strong ability called the Spear of Grungnai, which once you have enough units, you can literally just delete any enemy unit off the battleground that you want. So after handling our little maggot problem, we got fucking paid. It turns out fried maggots are actually a delicacy in Mexico. To help with our money problems, we also picked up the last perk in the clan's tech tab, Oath Stones, which reduces the upkeep for all my armies by 5%. Our newly confederated Dwarven lords were actually doing a decent job at shoring up our borders. All that was left was the mission and Archaon. To get a last injection of cash, we completed one of Malachi's missions. To sum up how this went, bombs. An insane, ridiculous amount of bombs. We had just hit over turn 100, so it was about time we wrapped things up. We recruited some more Thunderbarge units, and then we started marching on Archaon. Along the way, we did our final legendary battle for Malachi's adventures. This battle saw us taking on a bunch of tiny green men. I wish I could give you a detailed breakdown of how this fight went, but it more or less went about the same as all of our fights at this point. I mean, we had 4 losses, and we killed over 1,600 of them. We had grown to 11 Thunderbarge units, and holy shit, I could not wait to eject Archaon's fiery metal skull from his body. So we marched on his capital, and by marched, I really mean we flew straight over his walls and dropped the most vulgar and despicable insults from a safe distance. By this stage, Archaon was pretty weak, and he only had one more settlement left. So we took it, but he wasn't actually there, so he took it right back. But now we had him cornered like a rat, and Malachi swept in, and with the final battle of the campaign, we crushed him before we even had the chance to summon the Spirit of Grungnai, the ultimate flex. So with Archaon destroyed and 0 units lost in that battle, we had finally achieved the short victory, and we could now put our old, tired, short body to rest, flying as high as the balloons could take us. Well guys, if you made it this far, then thanks for watching. Don't forget to use my Raid Shadow Legends link in my description, or scan my QR code to get insane bonuses. Subscribe, like the video, become a member, you know, all that jazz. That's it for this one guys. I'll see you in the next one.